So the Gators yesterday had great news in picking up a commitment from Vernell Brown III, an elite receiver across all recruiting formats, 24/7, Rivals on 3, ESPN 300, elite receiver recruit from Orlando, Florida, in Jones High School. He is the grandchild of Vernell Brown Sr., who played at Florida, and then came along his son, Vernell Brown Jr., and then here comes Vernell Brown III, who committed to Florida yesterday, which also happened to be Billy Napier's birthday. So happy belated to Coach Napier. But the good news keeps has more good news comes in for Florida today in regards to recruiting. They bring back an employee that had left Florida in late February to join at Texas A&M, Mr. Joe Hamilton. I have an article here from an All Kinds of Weather from Neil Schulman, and he's talking about Joe Hamilton coaching, excuse me, not coaching, but leaving to join the Texas A&M Aggies back in Texas A&M before getting rehired back at Florida today. According to Rivals Brandon Howard, Florida is losing Joe Hamilton, the Gators director of scouting and recruiting relations, to Texas A&M for what is thought to be a considerable pay raise. The Gators had recently promoted Hamilton to his role in Gainesville this past offseason as a part of a wave of moves made by Napier to try to right the ship. Instead, Florida Hamilton will be returning to the Lone Star State, Texas, which is where he grew up. Hamilton, who initially worked with Napier at Louisiana in the position of quality control with a focus on player personnel and recruiting, then came with him to Florida as a defensive analyst after helping Napier land the Sun Belt's top recruiting classes 3 years in a row. At the same time, Hamilton was promoted. Napier also promoted Jacob LaFrance to the trailblazing new role of general manager at Florida, thinking behind the shifting of roles to create a fresh start, and there was reason to believe it would work because Hamilton is really good at his job. But the move backfired. Hamilton's departure now leaves another void on the Florida staff, and it continues in a rather unsettling pattern of Gators turning into Aggies. He was also talking about guys like, oh, here it is, Scooby Williams, Jaden Hill, linebacker coach Jay Bateman, and defensive line coach Sean Payton, who all left Florida to go join Mike Elko and the Aggies. And then you have the case of five-star quarterback C.J. Lagway. They were known to have an extremely personal relationship, meaning Lagway lost that connection when Texas A&M poached Joe Hamilton. Lagway is not thought to be considering a departure of his own, but it's also clear that the Calvary in Gainesville is collapsing this offseason. A laundry list of important assistants have voluntarily left the program, including offensive line coach Darnell Stapleton and a few other guys that I mentioned, and also former strength and conditioning coach Craig Fitzgerald. Yes, staff shuffling is common in the college football offseason, but not this much, and not this late into the offseason. As we talked on the show today, there's a consequence of losing games in the regular season. Your program becomes undesirable. Does Hamilton leave Florida so easily? If Florida was 9-3 in each of the past two seasons, maybe he still leaves, but likely requires more effort from the Aggie program to pull it off. But that was back in February. Today is today. So here is an article Neil Schulman wrote in the news of Joe Hamilton returning. Joe Hamilton is back in town. College football is known for its crazy recruiting flips, changes of hearts, and even some full circle roller coaster ride decisions, but usually usually an activity relegated to 17 or 18-year-old recruits. We don't see it much from coaches, but we just did. Joe Hamilton is widely considered to be one of the most well-connected people in the state of Texas and all of football. Decided to leave Florida for Texas A&M back in February, and that move, to be frank, stung. We did an entire YouTube show dedicating to it, as a result of losing games on the football field of the previous fall, and how the damage will continue rolling itself out in waves well into the future. And now, not even 5 months after leaving the program for his home state for what was thought to be a substantial pay raise, he did a complete 360. And he's now back with the Gators with exactly the same director of scouting title in the exact same office he used to work out of. Why exactly he came back is a great question. One there is no shortage of theories on, but what we do know is that it's big news to get him back. As for why and why it was so devastating to lose him in the first place, because he was now and is again the Texas recruiting guy for the Gators, meaning he's the go-to guy when they're trying to get recruits out of the state of Texas, which is what they did with DJ Lagway, and with what they did also with Xavier Filsaime, who eventually flipped Florida to stay at home in Texas for the Longhorns. By the way, the Florida Gators will play the Longhorns a week after the annual Georgia-Florida matchup. DJ Lagway, for example, came to Florida due to that relationship with Hamilton. The five-star quarterback from Texas built an extremely close relationship with him during the recruiting process. And his father has even come out and said multiple times that the signal caller is a Gator because of Hamilton. A highly touted freshman linebacker, Miles Graham, isn't even from Texas. That's correct. He's from the state of Georgia, but met Hamilton at a recruiting event and grew close with him almost overnight. Losing him had ended Florida's chances with a multitude of top prospects from the Lone Star State. Most notably, Xavier Filsaime, who I just talked about. A number of 2025 Texas prospects have apparently taken Florida off their list since Hamilton's departure, mostly most recently Riley Pettyjohn, who committed to Ohio State. So as far as a crippling loss to the infrastructure as it was to lose Joe Hamilton in the first place, Napier and Florida have effectively just put that right piece back in place. 5 months of relationship building won't be healed overnight, and it cannot possibly be. But the Gators are now starting to get on the recruiting trail again, and there's some positive momentum being built in this program. Of course, wins will have to come onto the field for any of this to matter. But if they do, hell, even just with the 75 season, the foundation for long-term success will suddenly look a whole lot rosier than it did when Hamilton left. Well, 7-5 to me, I'll say that's the acceptable number for me to be okay with the idea of Billy Napier coming back next year. But if you really want to buy my full entire confidence back, or at least make me re-earn my benefit of the doubt, I would say go 8-4. Then I would really shut people up. 7-5 may be good enough for him to give his job back, but for him to keep his job, excuse me. But I think 8-4 would really silence the doubters. And given where the program has been the past couple of seasons, both in terms of overall record and perception, that would be nice to know. And I don't disagree with what Neil Schulman wrote in this article. Having Joe Hamilton back is a great thing for Florida. Not only were they able to land that five-star recruit, even without Joe Hamilton, now to bring him back to help recuperate and rejuvenate this 2025 class that's needed because Florida, according to On3, it looks like to have a better 2026 class than 2025 class. But I think in order for that to even happen, you got to win the football game on the field. You got to have the same coaching staff returning. So back-to-back good news for Billy Napier and the Florida staff in terms of recruiting, getting that five-star recruit and getting Joe Hamilton back. That's good back-to-back news for the Florida Gators. And like Neil said, hopefully the performance on the field will supplement and complement the hopeful turning of the tides in recruiting for this upcoming class. So yeah, that's it.